information from her. The bottom line is that there's a part of me that I don't have access to, that she doesn't have access to, that isn't totally open out of my fear of having this be revealed. And because of that, I'm not saying that you can't have a marriage if you do any of that. There's plenty of people who have very different standards in terms of what they feel the need to express and not express. I'm just saying that it limits the capacity for deep intimacy to the degree that any of that's happening in the relationship. And if what you really want is a relationship that's going to get back to the question of spirituality, a relationship that really is going to support the deepest possible connection with each other, then anything that diminishes that is going to be intolerable.
So let's talk about being spiritually present and what that means.
Yeah, that's the word, present. It's like the sign says in the casino, you must be present to win.
That's the gift, that's the present.
Yeah, the present is presence.
With focused attention.
Yeah.
Boy, wouldn't we all like that?
Yeah, we would and we wouldn't, because when you're present, what are you present to? You're present to whatever it is that's there in the space of your experience. And if you are like most of us, then there are things that you have not been present for, that you haven't wanted to feel or recognize or acknowledge or experience, that you've kind of pushed underground. So when we really show up and when we're really present, whatever it is that we've put the lid on, good, bad, indifferent, it's going to float up into our awareness. And I think we call it the shadow.
Oh, and so a lot of people don't want to be present with that.
No. They don't. There's some things that we really want to be present for. You know, we want to be present for joy, for happiness, for love, you know. But then there are other things that we don't want to show up for if we haven't been really honest with ourselves and lived in integrity with our own truth. And, you know, most of us have been a little careless about that, you know, including myself. I mean, that's a big part of our work, I think, is spiritual practice really has to do with living in the truth of your own experience. And it doesn't mean that you have to go out there and tell the whole world all your, you know, dirty secrets. But it does mean that we live in a way that doesn't dishonor our own truth, where our actions and our words are congruent with what's within us. And so if you haven't really lived that way, then there's going to be stuff in your shadow that, you know, is going to be pressing up when you are present and when you show up.
But on the positive side of that, it's really nice to have focused attention from your partner when you want to talk to them and be with them and so forth, because nowadays we live in such a fast-paced world that people are on their computers and their phones and all the technology.
We're up against a lot. We're living in a culture that basically doesn't support the kind of relationships that we're talking about. We're living in a culture that values other things higher than authenticity, presence, intimacy, connection, vulnerability.
And also not just with spouses, with children and
across the board.
Grandchildren.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of that.
Yeah. And, you know, we all have our rationales for, you know, not being fully engaged or present, you know, things that we tell ourselves to justify, you know, being in the fast track and all the time. But the bottom line is that, like John Lennon said, life is what's happening when we're busy making other plans, you know. Life is happening while we are out there, you know, trying to get wherever there is more quickly. And so most of us are not present very much in our own bodies. You know? We're always, a few steps ahead of ourselves. So,
well, the other thing, too, I wanted to bring up is, you know, nowadays there's such a high incidence of divorce. And I know that sometimes people that are still together have issues over child rearing and, you know, who comes first. Sometimes even parents might get jealous of the other's relationship with their children or what have you. But in divorce, this is a big deal. And I know that you have a story in your book about rocky. And I wanted you to share that story because I think it's interesting about who comes first in the relationship, the parents or the relationship with the kids.
Yeah, there's different schools of thought on this, but if the couple doesn't put their primary focus on the marriage, I mean, the marriage is really the centerpiece of the family, and we want to give the kids what we think that they need, but what they need more than almost anything else is the example of a loving relationship, not one in which the parents love each other to the exclusion of the children,
but as an example for the children.
That's right, because if the kids grow up in a family where there isn't that kind of relationship, even if the kids get a lot of what it is that they want, what they're going to be missing is one of the most important things that a person can have, and that is the vision of what a healthy, loving relationship looks like. Not only that two parents can share, but in which the children are included.
Now, I can really understand this in a relationship where it's like a first marriage,
Yeah.
But with a divorce relationship, I think a second marriage, I think it complicates it. Because the parents are frequently feeling guilty and they don't want the children to feel left out and all that kind of thing. Of course, if you listen to somebody like Dr. Laura Schlesinger, she tells people not to get their second marriage and to just pay the attention to the kids and get married later on. Mm-hmm. But what do you think of that?
I think it gets really tricky with mixed marriages like that when children from both marriages or from one are brought into it, because the children do have a very special connection with the natural parent that they don't and never will have with the step parent, and it is important to acknowledge that and to recognize it, but always not to allow it to get out of balance. It's not a matter of, well, who comes first, who's on top. Sometimes the highest priority has to be the child's well-being in certain situations. There's no question about it.
Yes.
But not to the extent that the marriage is compromised or jeopardized. The two things that we have to do in any marriage, two needs that have to be met. One is the need to take care of the relationship, to really be attentive to the needs of each person and to provide for their well-being and support them in some way.
And to practice that spirituality with all their relationships.
Of course. And if you can do it in a marriage where I think it's more challenging than any other relationship, then you can do it anywhere. But the other thing that has to be done in it is you've got to give that same level of care and respect to yourself. And there's a lot of us are really good at one or the other, and we'll usually choose somebody who will complement us. The challenge is to be able to do both.
There's so many more things that we could talk about that I wanted to talk to you about, but I think we're going to be having you back at a later date along with Linda when she's better.
Well, yeah, then you'll get to hear her side of things.
Yes. But
Sure.
I think it's really important for people to hear that spirituality exists in relationships and in the marriage.
It's the fast track. As Stephen Levine says, it's the fast track to God.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, with half of marriages ending in divorce and 60% of second marriages, it's worth it to connect with Charlie and Linda Bloom on bloomwork.com, where you can find out more about their books and seminars and experience your relationship as a spiritual practice. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll be inspired to live more fully by learning how others approach spiritual experiences, helping each of us with our own spiritual path. If you feel a spiritual connection, enjoy and share it with all of creation. And we'll see you next time on a forum on spirituality where the Spirit lives on. If you've enjoyed the show and would like to see our archives and learn more about this program, go to aforumonspirituality.com.